Since 2016, I and many other players have enjoyed playing in the world of assassination provided by the latest games of the long-running Hitman franchise. With each release in this series, I've been fascinated to see how the team at IO have continued to create their complex sandbox levels, which offer a great mix of player freedom and crafted scenarios for dispatching targets in various exotic locations. Now, with the release of the Freelancer mode, I was curious to understand how IO have adapted their existing design concepts and gameplay to provide a different roguelike challenge for players new and old. What design changes were required to transform Hitman into a roguelike, and how have IO repurposed the existing sandbox levels to support this new game mode? Designing a Hitman level requires a lot of careful consideration to manage the chaos of creating and playing the complex interwoven sandboxes of assassination presented in each of the game's locations. It'll be useful to understand some of the design concepts that IO have developed to help achieve this, and much of this has been brilliantly explained in other videos, so for more insights check out the links in the description below. For now though, let's take a quick look at just some of these key concepts that will be useful when analysing the Freelancer mode. Social stealth is fundamental to infiltration in Hitman, and the levels are constructed to ensure that players can clearly intuit where they can and cannot go at any time based on real-world societal expectations. Areas are defined into a mixture of public spaces that are typically free of rules and private spaces with stricter rules and enforcers to stop players as they trespass. Access to private areas can be gained by acquiring the correct disguise that will allow 47 to move relatively freely as long as they avoid enforcers who can see through their disguise. Each area is constructed like Swiss cheese, full of holes that ensures that there are multiple exits from a space, giving players the opportunity to redirect to avoid an enforcer or make a clean break should something go wrong in the moment. At a high level, IO considers each level to either be a fortress, that is primarily private spaces with strict enforcement and defended boundaries, or a snail house, with mixed spaces that can be navigated to progress inwards towards the target. Although these categories may apply to the overall theme of a level, they can also be combined to create different experiences in the same level. Targets also have their own specifications. Dwellers will typically stay inside the safety of a fortress, while roamers will move around the level as part of their routine defined by the level designer. IO refers to these routines as tracks, and interrupting a routine can push the target onto another track of actions that can present opportunities to take them out, such as drawing them out of their fortress, or leading them into a private space for an unnoticed kill. When creating the various tracks that a target can take through a level, the designer is also able to construct various opportunities that allow the player to kill the target, either through an elaborate trap, or an innocuous environmental hazard that can be turned into a lethal accident. Pulling off these opportunities usually requires access to a specific tool or item that can be found in the level, and this gives the designer another option for crafting the complex puzzle of how to get away with murder. Often players can be guided towards these opportunities through clues found in the level that are presented diegetically or hinted at via the game's mission and challenge systems. These guided opportunities are great for providing more narrative context to the scenarios available to 47, but they are intentionally flexible to fit the sandbox gameplay, and are never explicit about how the player must kill the target when followed. All of this combines to create an intricate balancing act for the level designers based on three concepts: creating a complex yet believable sandbox location that allows for player freedom and improvisation, implementing flexible guidance that conveys story through scenarios authored by designers, and ensuring a replay value that encourages discovery and mastery of the level as part of the game's progression systems. If we now look at the basic structure of a Hitman contract, we can distill it down to distinct phases of action that the player will take to complete the mission. These phases apply to all Hitman game modes, but there are differences within each phase that modify the experience for players as a twist on the standard contract gameplay. Each contract begins with a loadout phase, where the player can be briefed on their target and customize their starting equipment based on their initial plans or personal objectives. Once they are in the level, players begin the observe phase, where they can identify key information about their target's location and their routines, as well as identifying the various social spaces and the associated disguises to access each area. While navigating and observing the level, the player is also revealing useful items and potential opportunities to take out the target. Once armed with this knowledge, the player moves into the setup phase. Here they form a plan about how to kill their target using the tools and opportunities that they have identified and begin setting up for the kill. They can focus on acquiring the items or disguises required to reach the target and disrupting their routines to expose them for the kill. If all that goes to plan and the target is in place, it's finally time to execute in the hopes of successfully dispatching the target. Failure at this point can often be disastrous, and quick improvisation might be required to salvage the opportunity. With the target neutralized, all that remains is to escape the area to complete the contract, or move on to another target in the level where the player returns to a setup phase to prepare another execution. Based on these phases, the player will typically spend most of their time on a contract in the observe and setup phases, with the execute and escape phases often being quick and intense depending on the player's chosen actions. Let's now take a closer look at how each phase plays out in Freelancer mode, and we can see how the modifications combine with the level design considerations described earlier. Receiving intel and choosing your loadout is a straightforward process in a standard contract. Each target comes with additional background intel that provides character details and hints towards possible opportunities in the level that can inform your initial plans and loadout selection. In Freelancer, your targets are randomly selected, and although they are named, they lack the character background that can help personify your target and reveal potential weaknesses before starting. Showdown contracts provide a few additional details to help you identify the target in the field, but overall, you're tracking down unknowns until you start the level and enter the observe phase. Choosing your loadout in a standard contract generally revolves around picking your preferred sidearm, suit, and 2 additional items that can help you on your mission. Other than choosing a new starting location and disguise, these choices have minimal effect on the coming mission. Freelancer, on the other hand, puts a lot more emphasis on this decision-making process. Since you risk losing any items that you take with you on a mission, careful consideration is often required to balance that risk of loss with the forthcoming challenge of the contract, particularly on harder contracts further into a run. Freelancer also layers on additional objectives and opportunities for monetary rewards that can affect the player's loadout selection. The player may choose to take explosives with them to blow open a safe, or choose a poison item to take out their target for a bonus reward. These choices are also limited by the items that the player has acquired, as well as the gear capacity limit, which can be leveled up as part of the mode's new progression system. This shifts the progression focus from an individual mastery of each destination to expanding your arsenal and unlocking new areas of your home that in turn provide access to additional items. Perhaps the biggest change with Freelancer during this phase is the process of selecting your next contract and destination, creating a new strategic layer for players when deciding how to progress. It can be tempting to select a destination that the players previously mastered, but it might be better to take a contract that has access to a supplier to spend your hard-earned money at this stage. All these combined options in Freelancer mode front-load the player's decision-making process and help give them a sense of control as they progress on their run. This is important given the random nature of the contracts and can give the player a sense of fair influence over their chances for success before being dropped into the unknown. Starting a standard contract is usually a predictable and safe introduction to the level, especially on repeat playthroughs, or if the player has chosen their start location and disguise. This certainty is also great for the level designer, as they can stage the reveal of key information about the target and potential opportunities based on these start locations, and the expected routes players will take from them. In Freelancer, the start locations are always random, along with the target position and their routines. This makes it a lot harder for the designer to stage the introduction of this key information in a way that can provide appropriate guidance towards opportunities. Instead, the player's first action in this phase is to activate instinct vision or open the map to reveal the target location. This is often far less elegant and also relies on the player having an appropriate mastery of the location to understand where the target is located. During this initial phase, the player will also want to observe where any additional objective opportunities are located to inform them how and where they may need to go first in the mission. Perhaps the supplier can provide the player with some poison to complete that objective, but is it worth taking out that courier first, to make sure that you have enough credits to buy the poison in the first place? Some useful items can still be found in the level, but many of the regular items typically found in the story contracts have been removed in the Freelancer levels, making the loadout selection more critical to the experience. Container chests located around the level offer players a random item that may prove useful should they be able to reach them, and create another optional objective to be identified. Since the player knows very little about their target in Freelancer, the observe phase is much more important for being successful and avoiding losing all progress on a run. This is especially true on showdown contracts where the player must carefully observe their target and identify them using a variety of clues. Getting the wrong target here could go horribly wrong, so spending more time to patiently observe and shadow your potential targets is often a good idea. Once the target has been identified, further observation is likely required to reveal opportunities to now take them out. This brings us to another major change in the design and experience of the Freelancer mode. Where a standard contract provides a number of carefully authored opportunities to take out a target by disrupting their designed tracks, the targets in Freelancer often only have a simple routine that lacks the complexity of the story contracts. This also means that the typical actions a player might take to set up an assassination are less applicable in Freelancer, including the guided mission stories that often incorporate bespoke opportunities to kill a specific target. When combined with the random target selection, this can make some opportunities very difficult to take advantage of, and does have a tendency to make these familiar aspects of the level less useful during Freelancer. Other opportunities added by designers to create general accidents and distractions are still present, but are also less useful for a lot of Freelancer targets that will rarely interact with these traps. A Dweller target that never leaves a public square is going to present a challenge that can't easily be overcome by setting up an environment trap without risking being discovered, especially if the hazards added by the level designer never overlap with the target's random routine. This does feel intentional as a way of providing a free-form experience for players that requires more improvisation and mastery of the game's mechanics to generate their own opportunities, or find ways of pushing targets towards these traps using the game's systems and rules. It is here where the items selected by the player during the loadout phase can provide an advantage, since some items such as jerry cans or batteries will allow players to create their own opportunities for environmental traps. Setting up an opportunity in Freelancer becomes a greater test of the player's understanding of the game mechanics and systems, as well as their skill in manipulating both within the game's rules. This creates a higher chance of failure, particularly for newer players, and often leads to frantic decision making that puts an additional pressure on the execute phase.
Congratulations, 47. The leader is eliminated.
At this point in the standard contract, the player is usually certain how they are about to take out their target, having taken the time to observe and set up the target through the various opportunities provided by the level designer. Having followed a guided mission story or observed that the target interacts with something in the level that can be turned into a trap, the player can often sit back and watch their target's imminent demise from the shadows, confident that their plan is about to execute as intended. Each successful execution can make the player feel like the master assassin that Agent 47 represents. In Freelancer, there is much more randomness, and often the decision to attempt an execution is a spur-of-the-moment opportunity that a player has recognized without any specific setup or intention on their behalf. The experience is much more intense and provides a different emotional experience as the player can feel unsure that they are making the right choice in the moment. Things are more likely to go wrong. The player may end up harming non-targets, and their actions can be witnessed by more people. Even if the player manages to dispatch the target, the way they pulled it off is more likely to be sloppy or generate a lot of attention. And as a player, you feel less like the master assassin that Agent 47 is meant to be. This is in part because the only thing that really matters in Freelancer is that the target is killed. Sure, there are score penalties for being spotted or killing non-targets, but they have minimal effect on your overall progression to unlock new areas of your home base. It's far more important that you're able to continue your current run, and to do that, you just need to kill the target. Oh, and escape, of course. With the target dispatched and any other objectives complete during a standard contract, the player can usually stroll out of the area to any of the available exits that they've observed and unlock to escape. While it is possible that the execution failed and the alarm has been raised, leading to the player having to shoot their way out to escape, there is usually the option to reload a previous save and retry the execute phase again, this time adjusting the plan to avoid a stressful escape. Since Freelancer lacks this backup option, players will have to attempt an escape regardless of how successful their execution went. The risk of failing a contract, and potentially an entire run, at this final phase of action can increase the intensity of the experience, not to mention the pressure. That is why it can be a good idea during the observe and set up phase of a Freelancer contract to identify and secure an escape route before committing to an execute, where possible. The same can be true during a standard contract, but Freelancer has another wrinkle to make this pre-planning more important. Any items left behind after escaping a level are lost, and cannot be used on another contract until you find or buy them again. This simple rule change creates decision points during every action phase of a Freelancer contract that all coincide for the player as they attempt to escape. Sure, I can equip my legendary sniper rifle during the loadout phase to take out the target and complete an additional objective. But can I be sure that I can escape with the rifle to use it again? What if the supplier is selling another rifle that I need to add to my collection? Can I escape with both? Can I enter this area with my sniper rifle, and if not, will I be able to hide it somewhere safe and come back to collect it later as I escape? All of these considerations throughout a freelancer contract culminate to make the experience of successfully escaping much more thrilling and risky compared to a standard contract. After all, escaping results in a successful mission, and the promise of progressing towards another contract to start the loop all over again. Who knows what this next contract will provide, what opportunities will be available, and whether you can keep your winning streak going to progress your run. This replayable intrigue and thrill is part of the appeal of the new Freelancer mode, which is clearly drawing upon the influences from other game modes available in Hitman. The thrill of taking your one shot to take out an elusive target with the risk of losing it all is a clear influence to the roguelite run format, and the unpredictable and unguided experience of player-made contracts provides the structure of the replayable gameplay in Freelancer. Despite the series being over 7 years old at this point, the underlying mechanics and design principles are all largely unchanged here. The team at IO have managed to create a new game mode by modifying a few game rules and reframing the context of the player objectives. By shifting the progression from mastery of individual levels towards concurrent progress on a run and the expansion of an explorable home base and item collections, the rhythm and intensity of the experience feels more varied, with a greater range of emotional highs and lows at each stage. The level design has also undergone minimal change to support this game mode, with small updates to include new objective items and NPCs that fit into the versatile sandboxes that carefully complement the existing gameplay systems and mechanics. Since the player cannot save and reload progress during a contract and the risk of loss is high, the ability to quickly escape an area thanks to the Swiss cheese level design provides small opportunities to recover from a failed plan without a complete loss. Of course, some locations are tougher than others, and those destinations with challenging fortress designs can be intimidating enough to avoid when selecting a contract location. The presence of large public areas in a level might also influence decision making if there is a high chance of a target being located in these heavily populated spaces. The random structure of the freelancer contracts makes it harder for level designers to stage opportunities as part of the sandbox experience, and there is less guidance available to players as a result. This leads to more freeform play in each contract and encourages players to come up with their own inventive solutions to take out a target, or they can always just rely on brute force. As with most randomization, patterns do start to emerge, and it is possible to build a new type of mastery as the player begins to understand the new target routines and starting locations available in each destination. As the player progresses through a run, it can become too easy to fall into a habit of reusing strategies that worked before to improve the chances for success, and with time, this can be combined with an understanding of the possible target routines for more efficient takedowns that can shortcut the observe or setup action phases. Overall though, the Freelancer mode is a clever repurposing of the Hitman mechanics, systems, and level design that is tailored for experienced players at the end of the current series' long lifespan. As the IO team focuses on new announced projects, Freelancer provides an engaging experience with lots to keep players entertained until Hitman one day returns in the hopefully not too distant future. I'm still enjoying playing Freelancer, and it was fascinating to take a closer look at how the mode was implemented by building on the existing gameplay and level design available in Hitman. What do you think? Is the mode a good fit for Hitman? Do you miss the guided stories? Or do you prefer the freeform challenge of these randomized contracts? Leave a comment below with your thoughts. Right then, I'm off to go take down another syndicate. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.